Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another podcast. Thank you for joining us today on this other amazing episode. Today, we get the chance to interview Jaime Butler. She's celebrating 19 years in the oil and gas industry this year with Baker Hughes, and she's currently the VP of the Permian. She was recently recognized as one of the top influential women in energy. Jaime's highly involved in the Permian chapter of the Women Network, where she serves on the advisory board, and she's also part of the Young Women Energized group that raises money and provides scholarship programs for high school women here in the Permian Basin. Jaime, thank you so much for being on here. We're super excited to have you on.
Absolutely. Thank you, Macy and Jaime. This is just an honor to join y'all this morning and have a really good discussion. I'm looking forward to it.
I have to say, this is a first for me to have a guest that has the same name as me, Jaime. Have you ever has anybody ever come to you with a mix-up thinking maybe it was Jaime?
Oh, yeah. So 19 years, you can imagine, in oil and gas, multiple occasions of answering the phone to, hola, ¿cómo estás? Jaime Butler. And and I'm Jaime. And then it's like a full stop. Wait, you're not male and you're not Hispanic? How do you say your name? It's Jaime. And actually, there's a funny story around my name. It's not a Hispanic influence. It's actually a French influence, and it was from my dad. And he really wanted to name me Je t'aime, which is love in French. And then my mom and him agreed that this spelling of Jaime would be more appropriate. And that's how I got the spelling of my name.
I love that. For anybody asking, her name's actually Jaime, and mine is Jamie. But it's just funny how the two can be intermixed.
Oh, well, hey, I did not get Jaime until I moved to the state of Texas. So I never really heard Jaime, and then when I moved to Texas, it was like, oh, okay. And hey, many bosses actually in 19 years, they call me Jaime still, and some of my old managers have shown me their phone. They actually have me in their phone as Hi, like Hay, May, May, to just and so I had a nickname in a lot of groups, Jaime, and I loved it.
Well, I think this is a great segue into you telling us a little bit about growing up and your back history.
Oh, absolutely. So actually I was not born and raised in Texas. But of course, as they say, right, you get here as soon as you can. So I was actually born and raised in a small farm town south of St. Louis, Missouri, along the Mississippi River. And that's where my parents were also born and raised. So, but overall, I'd say early childhood really wasn't a natural breeze for me. I was an awkward tomboy, and where you could find me was I was not inside playing with Barbies and dolls. I really I don't think I ever wore pink at all. And you could find me outside digging in the mud looking for worms to go fishing. Outside with my BB gun, probably shooting things I shouldn't be shooting, getting in a lot of trouble, and playing sports. So you could always also find me in the yard, someone else's yard, playing flag football, playing basketball, whatever sport. And it was always the neighborhood boys, and I was the only girl out there playing with those boys. And I was really fortunate that my dad actually saw that. And and again, I didn't have a lot of friends, so I was this awkward kind of lone wolf tomboy playing out there on my own with all these boys. And my dad really honed in on that and said, I think she's got a natural talent for sports. And he really started to push me into basketball. And he started signing me up for basketball camps. I still remember to this day the first basketball camp I ever went to. I was really, terrified, right? Because it's your first time. And I think I was 6 or 7, so very, very early on getting into the sport. And again, all boys at this camp, right? So really breaking that barrier, but learning from them too, recognizing that they were better than me and how can I learn from them. And my dad, like I say, he practiced with me every day, and he recognized, wow, she's got a natural talent for this. So continued to send me off to camps. Most of my summers were spent going to basketball camps or working with my dad. So he worked in the snack food industry, so I would work with him on the trucks and work his routes with him during the summer. And if I couldn't do that, then I was in the camp to sign me up for. And it really, I think, it gave me the confidence that I needed, because I'll go back to on top of all this, as an awkward tomboy, I really had a learning disability. I struggled a lot early on in my education. I couldn't read. I couldn't comprehend what I was reading, and I couldn't really write very well. And so I was sent off to remedial classes for most of my early childhood, all the way up through junior high. And going to remedial classes half the day, and people seeing that was a challenge, right, to live through. But I go back to that basketball piece. That I think excelling at that and practicing and getting better gave me confidence that I can actually win at something. Mm-hmm. I can be good at something. And, there were times where my dad obviously would push me over the edge, right? And, at the time I thought how brutal that was and how painful that was. I mean, there were often times I was going to dread that he was the one picking me up from basketball practice, because I knew it wasn't over for me. I knew it was going to make me stay. And usually it was 100 consecutive free throws that I would need to make before we depart and go home. And, at the time, right, you think that's just, you're miserable. But looking back on it, I think I learned a valuable lesson. It's practice, 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 right? And, being able to practice all the time and be driven to do that, you can actually accomplish it a lot if you give it that effort. But going back to my parents, though, so I do have a brother. I have an older brother. He's 4 years older than me, and my parents are still married today. Matter of fact, this weekend they're going to be celebrating 46 years.
Oh, that's great.
Wow.
So. But they actually graduated high school and had us, right? They didn't get a college education, but here's the cool thing is they did eventually, right? So they went back and they both got their undergrads. My mom went first, and she got her degree in education, and she became a teacher at my grade school. So that also helped me with my learning disabilities. So she was there guiding me and supporting me and making sure I got all of the resources and support I needed at school. And then my dad, when she finished, my dad went and he got his degree in business. And then they both actually ended up getting their masters. So really exciting to watch them go through that journey. I guess probably the downfall, though, is by the time I graduated high school, my dad got promoted. And that's how I ended up in Texas. So my dad was promoted in the food industry and promoted to Houston, Texas. And we moved to the Woodlands in 1997, and I had graduated high school. And so I just naturally went to the community college. I mean, it made sense, one, given the challenges I had faced with my education. Two, I knew it was well understood that a lot of our financial means were spent putting my parents through college, and that I would have to pay for my own way. And obviously community college being a little bit more reasonably priced, it worked out for me. And so I started going to Montgomery College there in the Woodlands and working full time, putting myself through school. So that's how I ended up in the great state of Texas.
Wow. I mean, inspiring and motivating story. I think anyone just looking at your childhood and to see where you are now, it just shows that the consistency and the hard work and the practice is what matters in life, not so much on, what you learn in school where, those sentences aren't well, written or read. And it's like, there's so much more out there when you get out of school, and it's all about, I think what your dad did is really amazing. And I know that when we've talked in the past, you always bring him up as someone really big in your life that impacted you. And it's really cool to see, even now as you're a leader, and you always bring up things that your dad taught you and how to lead a team. So that's really cool. And I'd love to get into that after, but how did you get into oil and gas? I know that's like a super random. So you were in school, and what happened?
Yeah, so I'm going to school there, and community college. I'm working towards my degree in general business. And really, this is really awkward. So I talked about how I wasn't a girly girl, but I actually thought I was going to go into the fashion industry, because after school, I started making things by hand. And going back to my dad, he saw something I had sewn and designed and made myself by hand. And the next day, he bought me a sewing machine. So, and so I learned and taught myself how to be a seamstress and how to design and make clothes and handbags and you name it. And I actually really thought I was going to the fashion industry. So I'm working at school or going to school, working full time. I was actually working at a publishing company, managing their book warehouse. And my brother, he's also a teacher, or he was a teacher at the time. And he coached a baseball team, and I went out to one of the games, and I met a man named Will Fauble. And Will is actually over at Barrett's now, so he leads a large business over there at Barrett's. But he was with Baker Hughes at the time that I met him, and had no idea. We were just having a very just casual, just talking, having a great conversation. And he asked me, had I ever heard of Baker Hughes, and would I ever consider, applying and joining the company and getting into oil and gas. And honestly, I had no idea how even gas got into my tank. I mean, I'm serious. Again, I'm new to Texas, don't really know a lot about it. I was only there for 3 or 4 years. Didn't really know anything about the industry. And he said, I'll tell you what. He said, I'm going to call you tomorrow. And guys, I didn't even have a cell phone. So.
Oh my gosh. I'll call you at home. Yeah.
He didn't give me his number, but he said, give me your number and I'll call you tomorrow. And so I thought, wow. So he did. He actually called me the next day. And at that time, he was actually president of Hughes Christensen Drill Bits. And I had no idea.
He must have seen something in this young girl, like for someone to follow
approach you
and
do that.
Yeah, because a lot of times they'll say, yeah, you should come work for us. Yeah. And then you never hear back from them. But the fact that he called you the next day, that's huge.
Yes. And followed up and went through with it is amazing.
Yeah. He called me the next day and he said, do you have a resume? And I said, yes, I do. He goes, okay, I'm going to give you an address. And I'm going to give you the name of the person that you need to go down and just drop your resume off. He goes, I don't know what openings they have, but I know they have some. So go down there, drop your resume off. So I did exactly. I mean, I was like, get down the road, get down there. It's actually at Rankin Road, Albany Westfield area, at 45, kind of next to the Intercontinental Airport. Get down there, hand my resume off. And then in a few days, I got a phone call from a hiring manager, and I interviewed first for a marketing analyst position, and they quickly got back with me and they let me know that they decided not to go with me. And they said, but there's other positions open in the office, and we're passing your resume around. And just a few days after that, I got a call for applying and coming in for an interview for an inventory analyst position, which actually probably better fit considering I was managing a book warehouse for publishing. So to me, that actually probably was a better fit. And I interviewed for it, and it was an awesome interview. I mean, I loved both. It was 2 hiring managers. I was going to report to, directly to one, and the other one was a functional inventory leader. And the rest is history. They called me a few days later. They made me an offer, and I was absolutely ecstatic. It was at that time, Baker Hughes, it was entry level, grade 1. So grade 1 being the lowest. So I came in at a grade 1 hourly admin role. And it was like, welcome to oil and gas. Just after 3 or 4 days of starting, got to go to my first rig up in East Texas and outside of Carthage, Texas. And at that time, that area was blowing and going, lots of roller cones being used. And even from a perspective of being very open, just back, and you think about 19 years ago and where we've transformed from a safety perspective, right? But I just remember, I had obviously all my PPE, but being able to crawl all over that rig, and those guys, the company man, showing me everything inside and out. That's when I think that was the day that I said, I love this. And I think I had told you guys the other day, with my learning disability, I'm a visual learner and being able to feel things. So oil and gas really gave me that touch and feel experience, and being out of that rig and then seeing how everything comes together and works, and then understanding, okay, the hydrocarbon comes out of the ground. Then it goes to somehow gets to the refinery. Okay, then it gets in my tank. And so it's like all these light bulbs going off for me, which was really exciting. And then found out after starting at Baker Hughes, they were going to support me and help pay and finish out my undergrad degree. So just a few years after working there, I finished my degree in business marketing. So, and 19 years of just all kinds of crazy, wild positions, worked in finance, marketing, technology, supply chain, manufacturing, operations, commercial, really just very blessed and fortunate.
It's amazing, especially that you were able to come in and do that and also apply the learning disability that you talked about to the application that you were in, and it made you very successful. So it's like you never let anything hold you back. And I think that's just so valid in today's world. And I just love that you were able to share that with us. I would like to ask you a little bit more around the finance role. I know that since during your career, most of your time was in supply chain. Did you feel unqualified, or were you scared to take that opportunity when they asked you to go into finance, since that wasn't really, your background to begin with?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, that one really happened serendipitously, right? I was in the right place, right time. It was in the same office, and a hiring manager, he knew I had just finished my degree officially, which made me qualified to actually apply for the financial analyst position. Because so I will say, having a piece of paper, obviously you learn everything on the job, but that degree gave me the opportunity to be able to even be considered for the financial analyst. And I really didn't have plans to go that direction, but I did get to see that team and how they work and some of the things they were getting to do. And so I applied, a little bit scared because going back to my learning disability, I wasn't I was told a lot that I wasn't good at math. So I actually thought I wasn't good at math, so how can I actually be going into finance? But now I went in and going back to that touch and feel, being able to, they offered me the job. I took it, and the team welcomed me with open arms. I asked tons of questions. They showed me everything, and going to touch and feel and understand how the revenue works, the P&L inside and out, being able to forecast the revenue and all the key drivers to forecast all of the revenue and profitability. Again, just you're able to connect to that real life feel, like this is a real business, this is a real operation. And I will say, even like drill bits it's a simplified P&L to work around too. So that's also a benefit too, being in the drill bits product line. Just the simplification of the P&L and the revenue generating, like not a lot of service per se, a lot of sales and rentals. So
you basically can go to the rig, drop it off, and you're done.
Exactly.
I was in drill bits as well. So it was, that was the easiest part. I would say it's like a product, not a service. So you leave it, you go, and all your expenses and stuff can be accumulated during that time, and you don't have to worry about the service and hourly charges afterwards.
Yeah. And probably really beneficial for me, right? Because having, it's all about getting that confidence, right? And so I think drill bits was a product line that was really, and didn't even know it, right? Had no idea, right? Getting into oil and gas, starting with that product line. But that product line, I look back on it, probably the best thing for me, and able to learn and get that confidence.
Wow.
It's amazing to hear your side, though, because that is exactly where I started, was Smith bits. So I can totally relate when you're talking about the drill bits.
Yeah. So you were a competitor then.
And I was off Rankin Road too. So
yeah, it's actually right there. I would have to pass it every day I was departing. So
yes. So I know we heard that you got your MBA at Penn State while you had a baby and also working. So how did you do that? Especially because there was some traveling involved. What role did your husband play in this?
Yeah. Oh gosh. I go back to that time going, I don't even know how I did all that. But, it was around, I think 2008 timeframe that we really started. My husband had gotten his MBA, and I actually ended up getting my master's in supply chain management. So, because he had his MBA, and he said, maybe you should go a little bit different since you have an undergrad in business marketing. Maybe you should get a master's in more technical area and more area of expertise. And so, of course, he's a Penn State alumni. So, of course, Penn State was a natural fit, and said, we really need to, because my undergrad that I ended up finishing up with, Baker Hughes helping and supporting me came from University of Phoenix. And great program, learned a lot. It was wonderful. It worked out for me personally at that time, but he felt, okay, let's look at a really, really good master's program. And Penn State was number one for their supply chain management program as well. So it all fit, right? Oh, he's Penn State alumni. They're the number one program in the States. So I applied and they accepted me. And the other nice thing about the program was that I could finish my first year and have a graduate certificate and then finish out my master's. So they split the program into 2 years, a 1 year and a 2 year. And I actually had my second son. I have two boys. I have a 15-year-old and an almost 11-year-old. So I had my second son actually in between year 1 and 2 of that program. And Baker Hughes, again, coming back to Baker Hughes being a wonderful company, they supported me through that program, and they allowed me to travel back and forth to University Park, Pennsylvania, to work with my professors, and then even do my residency, because a part of that program, you do a residency in your year 2 as well. So, my manager, Baker Hughes, supported me through that whole process. My husband supported me through that process. You think about having a newborn and going back and finishing out year 2, having to write a thesis. I don't even know how I did it. I mean, I think you just
do it. You just do it. Yeah.
Maybe a blur, but again, I think it's about the support system around you, having it. We don't have family there with us, because my parents actually ended up moving to Tennessee, and they both teach school now over in Tennessee. And my husband's parents were not in Houston at the time either. So it really is surrounding yourself, with people that you trust and that can support you. And not only that, I mean, yes, I think that there are times where we had to get outside help, babysitters, nannies, etc. But I think it was definitely well worth it, and it gave me the opportunity then to move into manufacturing.
Well, you mentioned a lot about how much Baker supported you during this time. And I know that in the past you've talked about how Baker has evolved over time to support women in management roles. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I think for me, I saw around like 2006 timeframe a real change in Baker Hughes and the recognition of building the female pipeline. And I say the female pipeline because I think there was a recognition of our pipeline is not full. And we really need to build that pipeline so we can start getting female leaders in place. And we worked closely with Catalyst at the time. And we started going to up to New York and participating in the Catalyst conference and really starting to open up more open dialogue on diversity and inclusion as well. And then from there we formed the employee resource groups, and it really started to transform over time, and it's brought us to where we are today, where we have actually, I think, over, if I'm not mistaken, 10 employee resource groups. And so you can be an ally for all of those, and you can be a member for one that you are affiliated with. So of course I'm a member for the Women's Network Group, and I'm also our executive sponsor here for our Women's Network Group here in the Permian for Baker Hughes. But I'm also an ally for all of our other employee resource groups, because that's how passionate I am about diversity and inclusion. So it's been a wonderful journey to see how we transformed and made that transition.
Mm. How about, what would you say was like the most pivotal moment in your career? Maybe a specific role where it was maybe very challenging, but also kind of like the most rewarding and kind of made you change from, getting into more of a leadership role?
Yeah, absolutely. People have heard this story before, so it's almost probably like a tune that's been overheard. But so 19 years, right? And it was in 2009, I believe, right at the kind of like that Shell Revolution time frame. finishing up my master's, and I was actually working in Gulf of Mexico at the time in a materials role, and received a phone call to tour the machine shop over at Rankin Road that made all of the MWD, LWD, downhole motor components. So basically all the mechanical parts on the drilling side was made out of that shop. And I really wasn't sure why they had asked me to come tour the shop. It was a little bit, I had just flown in from Trinidad, so I was a little groggy. I did a red eye back in from Trinidad, and went over the shop, toured the shop, and then the manager, the hiring manager, he was leading all of drilling manufacturing at the time. He across the globe, because we have manufacturing plants everywhere. He said, "Hey, well, so the reason I wanted you to tour the shop is your name has been brought up as potentially leading this shop as a plant manager." And I looked at him like, "What are you talking about? I have no manufacturing experience." And that's when he said, "Well, you know, there is a probably a smaller position over on the electronics floor. It's more of a, you know, a cell manager, like over a cell. You know, would you, you know, if you feel more comfortable doing that role and get your, you know, you're more familiar with manufacturing, I'll be glad to shift you over there." He said, "But we really had you in mind for this role. We think you have a great opportunity. We think you can do it." And he's like, "So what do you think?" And I immediately just said, "I'll take the machine shop."
Wow.
Shop. So it was 100 at the time. It was 100 machinists and welders, all men, by the way, too. And came in. I remember the town hall where they introduced me. It was terrifying, but it was the most pivotal moment in my career. And that team, I still go over to Rankin Road. Obviously now it's different with COVID-19, but even traveling, because I'm based in Midland now, but traveling back to Houston, and I go over to the cafeteria at Rankin Road, and all of those machinists and welders see me. It's like reunion and hugs, and they really were my family, and we transformed that shop. It was just amazing to be part of. We introduced Lean Six Sigma. We quadrupled production. We had record on time delivery. Really became my, I think, pivotal role, and became part of a family that I'll forever be connected to. I still coach and mentor a lot of those folks over there, so that's great.
What do you think is the reason why it was so successful? Would you say is how you led the people and how you took your approach when you went into the role, and how you made some changes? Or
yeah, I think so. Well, I think this is something I've really learned over time, and I know it's going to kind of sound a little strange, but you know, an old saying about the month of March: it can come in like a lamb, go out like a lion, or it can come in like a lion and go out like a lamb. I think for me, coming into a new role, I've always come in like a lamb. Don't come in like a lion. You ask a lot of questions, you observe, you do a lot of one-on-ones. You really understand the challenges that your team is facing and what barriers you can help them remove. And in that instance, for that machine shop, there were investments in capital that they've been asking for years, for decades, that they were not getting in order to be successful. And so that was step one for me, is really going to fight for what we needed to be able to make our demand schedule. And the other piece is there was some interesting dynamics going on in that particular shop, where employees were getting away with a lot of unethical, activities. And it's something that, of course, a lot of people joke around like, "Are you like a CSI, like FBI investigator? Because you pick up on these things."
Yeah.
But for those that are around me, they know that integrity is at my core. Like, I'm all about being fair, firm, and friendly, but fairness and integrity is really key. It's my foundation. It's what, I lead and stand by every day. And I picked up on some, I would say, unethical activities going on. And, me as a leader, I had to make a decision to nip it in the bud pretty quick. It was impacting the entire shop. Even though it was only a few employees, it was impacting the entire operation, because people thought no one will ever do anything about this, right? No one will ever do anything about this. And the reason nothing had been done about it is because one of those employees in particular knew, he was the only one that trained and knew the trade secret process of what he was doing. So if I were to take action on that particular employee, and discipline and potentially terminate, I was going to impact our entire demand schedule. Our costs will increase because we'll have a lot of scrap trying to learn this process. So, but again, I go back to integrity. It's at my core, and I decided to pursue terminating the employee. It was against policies, procedures. It was unethical what was going on. And yeah, it was awful. I mean, I took a lot of heat from leadership too. Like, you're not meeting your schedule yet? Why? Yeah. Well, remember, you have to learn, right? And I brought in a guy and that came in for his interview with the welding. I knew nothing about welding, right? I'm like 3 weeks on the job, and he came in with a welding helmet, and I showed him all the welding operations, and his name was Kevin. And Kevin asked me, which is the most challenging process? And I said, well, this one right here, because we just let go of the employee and he was the only one that knew how to do it. And he said, that's the one I want to do if you hire me. And it did it. And he took it, ran with it. He trained an entire department, and we made our schedule the next year. I think we had 554 motors to deliver. We went from zero motors to deliver the year before to 555 motors we had to assemble and deliver, all of the drive studs, all of the bearings, all the parts. And so and it was the rotors. So it was the rotors that particular operation, it was the coating on the rotors, and we had 555 of those to make. And we ended up delivering 556. It was like December 31st. I'm like, no, you're going to issue on that last one. We're going to exceed our target for the year. So yeah, it may have set us back for a few months, but in the long term, it was the right thing to do. And I think, leaders need to have that courage to make those decisions, take that risk. It may be an impact in the short term, but you got to look at the long term, and you got to look at the health of your organization. You got to do the right thing.
That says a lot of you as a leader, and not only that, but being the only woman in that group at that time too, that had to have taken a lot for you to step forward and do that. So, I mean, I commend you for that. And I think that says a lot about you, and a huge reason to why you're so successful, because you stand by what you say. And I really love that about you.
Thanks. Yeah. I always said, thank you. Thank you for finally doing something, because this was something in the shop that had been going on for a long time, and somebody action.
So through your career, I'm sure there's been a lot of instances where you've been the only woman in the room. Have you ever dealt with pushback? And if so, how did you deal with that? Or do you have any advice for our listeners that might have to deal with that on a daily basis?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, obviously this is a question I get asked a lot, and wherever I go, and a lot of the women that I mentor as well and coach throughout the organization, outside the organization. So, I mean, I think that, I try not to focus so much on the challenges, and in particular, I mean, they're there. I know they are. And yes, have I faced some of those challenges? Absolutely. But I think I was raised from a perspective that anything is possible. So absolutely everything and anything is possible, and always have a positive mindset. And so if you're facing adversity, don't actually acknowledge it per se, as far as letting the negativity, really get into your mindset. Really approach it with an open mind, and you more than likely will be able to influence the decision, or you'll be able to change the perspective of maybe it's an individual, right, that you're working with, that's the challenge. And maybe it's just a situation in particular. So I think approaching it with an open mindset, I don't think it's fair to say don't acknowledge. I mean, yes. But one thing I can say is that I think this industry is by far the most female friendly, wonderful industry. I mean, of course I have not worked in another, but when I ask questions, whether it's male, female, whoever, they've always been there to support me. They've always helped answer, guide, coach, mentor, even out on location. I think there was maybe one particular instant where, I wasn't welcome on location, and that was a challenge. And so the way I handled that is I came back to leadership and said, hey, I tried to go out to this particular rig site and I tried to get the job done, and the customer told me I wasn't allowed. And so I think then it's in the company's hand now to have that conversation at a higher level with that particular, organization, whether it's the customer, the rig, whatever it may be, right? And have that courage to say, no, we don't condone this. This isn't right. So, but that was only one, and you're talking about 19 years.
Mm-hmm.
I would say there's a misconception sometimes at times about our industry. It's dirty. It's not, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, totally. I think that's probably the reason why we want to start this podcast, because we were like, we should shine a light on the fact that we're both women and we've had great careers and we love it. And like you said, people have always been very open to help. Any sort of questions, there were never dumb questions. It was always like, yeah, let us teach you. There was always that family, friendliness that I felt with the oil field, which is why we love it so much. I feel like it is a family. Everyone's always been super respectful and nice about it. So to end, I have a really a hard question, but what do you think companies need to do nowadays in 2020, oil field companies, to try to retain women talent and really do grow their numbers? Because I feel like over the last 10 years, it's always been we need to bring more women in. Let's fill this pipeline. It's all about these numbers. What do you think are what are we missing? What do we need to do as an industry to really keep those women? Because they do come in, but they somehow fall off in the middle.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, when we look at the core, right, it's all about recruit, retain, and develop, right? So first you want to attract. So, and attraction starts at an early age. And so that's why even the Young Women Energized program that I'm a part of, I think we as women in our industry have that responsibility to make sure we're engaged in the community at a younger level. That'll attract, I think, women to our industry. And it's working, right? I've seen a lot more women coming into our industry, and women transitioning, mid-career from automotive over to oil and gas, which is really exciting to see. But I think it really starts there, right? That's step one, is really addressing it at a young age, and getting involved in STEM programs, involved in scholarships. Through that Young Energized program, yes, we do the scholarships the money that we raise for the scholarships, and we give those. But we also, when we award those scholarships, we do a mentoring session with all of those high school girls. So it's and they get to ask all kinds of questions across women leaders and part of the Women's Energy Network that attend. So I think that really is important, right? Starting at an early age, getting attraction there, sharing your stories. Like this podcast is a great example, right? Sharing that it's not bad. There's wonderful opportunities. And, even if you get a degree in finance, you can go into oil and gas. The wonderful thing about oil and gas is you don't need a technical degree per se. You can get any degree, and there's going to be plenty of opportunities for you to move across. And I think I'm a good example of that. You can move to commercial, you can move to operations, you can move to finance, you can move to HS&E. I mean, there's all these functional areas that you have an opportunity to move to. So I think getting that message out is really key. So that's step one. And I think the retaining is really key, right? So we get the attraction, and I think you're absolutely right. I think the challenge is being able to retain and develop. And so that's where organizations really have to put a lot of focus on once we're able to bring these women in and attract them and get them on board, is stay. Obviously we want them to stay with Baker Hughes, right? I'm going to be a little selfish there, but more importantly, I'm a very big picture. I'm an industry. I focus on the industry, so we want them to stay in the industry too. So it's obviously sad to see them go over maybe to a competitor, but at the end of the day, if they've stayed in the industry, then I think that's really great to see, because there's a chance that we could get them back, right? And so retaining and developing those tools, those resources, mentoring, partnering up. So we as Women's Network, I think that's a very powerful network. The organization leans heavily on our resource group to be able to be that, catalyst to, make sure that we're developing and we're getting all of our women the tools and the resources that they need, and helping them find a mentor. I mean, and I think doing your part too as a leader, as a women leader, is really important too. So, you know, I make sure I make a conscious effort to find the time to spend with my mentees. And often I share with my mentees that this isn't just about me mentoring them. I'm actually learning too. So I'm a firm believer in mentorship is actually a two-way mentoring, because I'm learning, because oftentimes some of the women I'm able to mentor don't sit inside the team that I may be part of, right? So I can learn from them and they can learn from me. So that's really, really important. And I think the employee resource group really helps drive that development, and really helps drive that culture change, and recognizes the strengths of diversity and inclusion. And I think going back to our core values too. So we as an organization, I mean, our core values are grow, lead, and collaborate and care. And I think all four of those resonate with diversity and inclusion in all of our resource groups.
Jaime, I love everything that you just said and all the advice that you gave for not just people and women, but just for organizations as well. And it just says a lot about you, from you starting from the ground zero and moving your way up. I'm pretty sure you're probably one of the first people on our podcast that literally started from ground zero. And that's very inspiring for all of those who feel like they have to have some sort of degree in order to get into this industry and be successful. So you definitely prove that is wrong. You can do it from the start. So we really appreciate that. And we appreciate you being on the podcast. Thank you for your time today.
And shout out to your dad.
Yeah.
You'll be proud. I got that basketball goal back here. Y'all can see that.
Yeah.
So I will take little breaks here and there, because, you know, hey, it's difficult working right now remotely, and making sure you're taking those breaks. So I got my basketball goal back there, and taking some shots here and there. But no, hey, you guys are really a true inspiration. You know, that this podcast, again, going back to that core of getting the message out, right? And so you are so inspirational in getting our messages out, our stories out, to really show that our industry is a fantastic place to be. And, you know, we come and we welcome you with open arms, so come join us. So thanks, Macy and Jaime. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And for our listeners, please leave a comment, and also follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. We love to hear from y'all. Thank you.